I've created one application in web app and I call it as Great Photography. So if I click on it, I would like to show you the URL as to how it looks. I've also customized the web page so that it looks like that, Azure AD Rocks. Now I would like to publish this application to the users. So I'll go to my Azure Active Directory and first get this Azure app in my enterprise applications. That's the first thing that I got to do. I think I forgot to copy the URL. So I'll quickly go ahead and copy the URL because that's something we'll need. So, okay, that's in my clipboard. Go to Azure AD. Now, under Enterprise Applications, I need to add a new application. Now, since the applications that we want to push is not in this list, I would like to add my custom application. So this is what you're gonna click on, just applications that you are developing. And then it takes me to register my new application. Then click on new application registration and say that this is a photography app and paste the URL and then click on create. Give it a minute and then you should be able to see it in your custom applications. I'll close it and refresh the page. By the way, you should be able to see this new application under application registrations. I'll close the whole thing, go to application registrations. I should be able to see my app here. I should see Dropbox plus the photography app. So if I click on it, I should see the various parameters it has. Now we'll see how we can publish this particular application to the users. It's basically the same way. So I'll go to Enterprise Applications, identify my application, which is right here. This is something that we did earlier as well for the Dropbox for Business, and I'm going to do the same thing for photography app. Go to users and add Joe here because I would like Joe to access this new application. All right, I'm doing this quickly because we already done it once. All right, so open the in private mode again, go to my apps.microsoft.com, log in as this user. Okay, I think you caught me there. Gotta go and change this. Okay, much better. Login. Now I must see both photography app as well as Dropbox in the applications list. There you go, you see it. Let's try to access that. I'll click on it and it should take me right to the application, and I can do that. In the next section, let's take a look at how we can do branding for these users. Every Azure Active Directory domain comes with an initial domain name, and that is in the form of your domain name .onmicrosoft.com. It will be in the form of your email address without any special characters .onmicrosoft.com, and this is your tenant name. This initial domain name cannot be changed or deleted. But if you would like to add your corporate domains to Azure AD, you can absolutely do that. For example, your organization probably has other domain names which you use to do business, and there will be users who will sign in using their corporate domain name. Adding a custom domain to Azure Active Directory allows the users to log in with their own custom domain names. For example, instead of logging in as Alice at the default domain .onmicrosoft.com, users can log in as alice at mycompany.com. The process of adding your custom domain is very simple. You need to get into Azure Active Directory, scroll down and click on Custom Domain Names. Once you click on Custom Domain Names, you will see that your default domain name is added here. You can add your custom domain by clicking on the Add Custom Domain Name button and type your domain name here. Let's say your domain name is my ecomproducts.com. You can then just type that and click on add domain. But that does not finish the process. You need to further go ahead and add either the text record or the MX record in the DNS of your domain name. So you need to log in to your registrar. For example, if you have purchased your domain name called myecomproducts.com with GoDaddy, BigRock, HostGator, whoever that may be, you will log into that portal for your registrar, then go to the DNS control panel and make these changes in the public DNS. You can either create a text record or create an MX record. Once it is done, you need to click on verify. At times, the verify button may not work because it takes about 24 hours to propagate the DNS changes that you have done. So it's always recommended that you wait an hour before you click on the verify button and before everything gets propagated to the global DNS. You also need to ensure that there are no typos when you're copying. So I always suggest that you use this copy button so that way you eliminate any errors. Let's talk about conditional access. Security is a top concern for organizations that are using the cloud. A key aspect of cloud security is identity and access management, and when it comes to managing your cloud resources. Today, we are living in a world where mobile first is the motto for the companies, and bring your own devices is the bottom line. As a result of this, focusing on who can access a resource is just not sufficient anymore. The Active Directory administrators needs to master the balance between security and productivity. You also need to factor how a resource is accessed into an access control decision. With Azure Active Directory conditional access, you can address this requirement. Conditional access is a capability of Azure Active Directory, and with this, you can implement automated access control decisions for accessing your cloud apps that are based on those conditions. There are certain common scenarios. First one is sign-in risks. Azure Active Directory identity protection will detect these sign-in risks. How do you restrict access if detected sign-in risk indicates a bad actor? What if you would like to get stronger evidence that a sign-in was performed by a legitimate user? What if you doubt that, or your doubts are strong enough to even block specific users from accessing an application? That comes under sign-in risks. Network location. We know that Azure Active Directory is out there in the cloud and hence it is accessible from anywhere. What if an access attempt is performed from a network location that is not under the control of your IT department? Using a username and password combination might be good enough as a proof of identity for access attempts, but what if you demand a stronger proof of identity for access attempts that are initiated from other unexpected countries or regions of the world? What if you want to block access to certain locations? That option is under conditional access network location. In Azure Active Directory, users can access cloud applications from a broad range of devices, including mobiles and other personal devices. What if you demand that access attempts should only be performed using devices that you manage or your IT department manages? What if you want to block certain kind of devices from accessing cloud-based applications in your environment? Client application. Today, you can access many cloud applications using different types of apps like web apps or mobile apps or desktop apps. What if an access attempt is performed using a client app type that is not known or that is known to have issues? What if you require a device that is managed by your IT department for certain application types? These questions and the related answers represent common scenarios for Active Directory conditional access. So conditional access is a capability of Azure Active Directory that enables you to handle the scenarios that we just discussed. A conditional policy is a definition of an access scenario which uses the pattern like this. When something happens, do this. When people are trying to access from a particular application, let them access the application or deny access to that application. So conditional access is more about defining the conditions and then the access controls. Access controls can be grant or deny. In the next set of videos, we'll see how you can set up conditional access in Azure Active Directory. Let's go ahead and do some proof of concept of conditional access in Active Directory. I've got a new tenant here, which is keeplearningcloud@hotmail.com. My older one expired. So I've created a new user called Alice, and I want to give some conditional access to Alice. And my intentions are to make sure that Alice can log in only from the geographical locations in the United States. And when Alice tries to log in from a different location, from a different country, or using proxies, Alice should not be able to log into my cloud-based enterprise-wide applications. Or any employee in my organization should not log into the applications in Azure. Let's see how we can set this up. In Azure Active Directory, there's something called conditional access, which we just spoke about. So I've already set this up and I'm going to show you how it was done. Got to click on conditional access, and then you have to create a new policy. You'll get a blade in which we need to specify the users and groups whom you want to be part of this conditional access, the cloud applications, conditions, and access control to say if you want to grant access or deny access. I'll give this a name called US allow only. That means that the users which will be part of this will be allowed to access applications. That's what I want to do. Click on users and groups, and you have the options if you want to exclude this group or include this group. Do you want to include all users or selected users? You can select guest users or directory roles or users and groups. If you click on select, you can select the list of users and group that you have. The guinea pig in this case will be Alice, whom I will be testing on. Click on select. Then you can also granularly filter them based on cloud applications. Do you want them to access all the cloud applications or specific cloud applications? I'm going to select all cloud applications. So done. This is the important part now. Do you want to block them based on the sign-in risk, device platforms from where they're logging in, geographical location from they are getting into the application, client apps, and the device state? The sign-in risk, is that considered as high, medium, low, or is that no risk at all? So that you can see that in the auditing logs. So once you consider that this authentication is risky and very high, then you can see such kind of logs in the audit logs. I'll say no at this time. Move on to the next one, which is device platform. You can pick and choose the devices from where the users will be allowed to log in. Should they be allowed from Android, iOS, and the ones in the list here. Note that you also have an exclude option here. So you can exclude an iOS. Nobody will be able to get in from here. So no at this time. Geographical locations. Do you want to map this user to location? So users can get in only from the locations which are marked here. Select locations and select the named locations which I've already created. I've created 2 locations and I'm going to show you how it was created in a minute. So I will select US locations and then click on that. Within this named locations, I've marked United States. So that way people logging in from United States can get in based on the access controls we specify here. All right, done. You also have the options to specify client applications. What are the various client applications that are allowed? Well, do you want them to log in through browsers or mobile applications or desktop clients or one of these checkboxes that you have, like modern authentication clients or active sync clients or other clients. I'm not selecting this at this time. Device state is another condition that you can specify. Well, you can let them get in regardless of the device state or their health. Do you want them to log in only if they are joined to Active Directory or marked as compliant? You'll ignore it this time. But if you notice, I've selected just one condition here, which is when this specific user is logging into cloud-based applications and logging in from this location will be granted access or denied access. Now under grant, you got multiple options. You can enforce certain policies. When this user tries to log in, they will be allowed to do or should be using multi-factor authentication. Their device is required to be compliant. Their device must be joined to Azure Active Directory or must be using an approved client. Well, you can click on this hyperlink here to identify what are the approved clients as per Microsoft. And then finally, do you want all of these selected controls, or if at least one of these satisfy, they will be allowed to get in, right? So you can pick and choose whatever you like, or as per the discussion that you have with your team, you may want to narrow down a particular criteria. What I've done is I've already created the conditional access, and I'm going to show you how that looks like. These are the two policies that I have. US only access, which says that the user called as Alice will be able to get into all cloud applications, and the condition is that the user must be logging in from a particular location only, and I've mapped the named location, which is US locations, and have I allowed it or denied access. That is under access control. I have allowed access only if the user uses multi-factor authentication. The user is enforced to do multi-factor authentication. So when you're doing the lab, make sure that after selecting all of this, please toggle this to on, because by default the state is off. Okay, I'll close this, and there is another location that I've created where I would like to block access. In this case, I have blocked to all other geographical locations here, and these named locations are created under the name location section, which I'm going to show that to you in a minute. So this user, Alice, when he tried to log in from the location included here, will be denied access, right? Let's see how named locations are created. Named locations is right here under policies. You can create the locations by clicking on new location, and as you see, I have two locations defined. One is for United States and the others is for other countries. And you can create new location like that. Put the name, the IP ranges, or the countries from where you want to allow or deny. Here you can see the drop-down menu with all the countries in the world we have today, and you can check and uncheck some of these based on the decision taken by the management as to whom do you want the applications to be accessed for security purposes. Let's go ahead and see the behavior of this now. I will launch Chrome, so I'll go to myapps.microsoft.com and let Alice log in to the apps portal. Alright, I've typed my user ID and password and hit next. Keep in mind that I'm logging in from a location in the United States, so currently in Chicago. So this is enforcing multi-factor authentication for me, because as per the conditional rule, I should be allowed to access only if I have multi-factor authentication. I'm going to do the same thing from a different computer, which I've already created in, this one is in Europe, this is in France. So if you look at the time zone, it's like 8:50, but yeah, just take time zone. So this is UTC, GMT time, yeah. GMT is somewhere in Europe. Let's try to connect. myapps.microsoft.com, log in with the same user. All right. Now you should get a message right there that this user is not allowed to log in. Well, you get a message. The sign-in was successful, but does not meet the criteria to access the resource. For example, you might be signing in from a browser, app, or location that is restricted by your domain. This is conditional access, where you can specify conditions and tell people what kind of applications that they can access from what geographical locations, and then several security conditions as well, their applications, their browser, their geographical location, all of them can be granularly be specified in the conditional access. Conditional access, auditing, and risky sign-ins. All three of them go hand in hand. The security reports in Azure Active Directory will help us get insights into the probability of a compromised user account in your environment. If the user logs in from one geographical location at 9:30 a.m. and logs in from a different location at almost the same time, let's say 9:35, then that is a reason for suspicion. That means someone has probably hacked or compromised the account. A user account cannot log in from two different locations at the same time. If that happens in your organization, and if that is a legitimate access, you might want to whitelist that IP address. In this video, I'm going to show you the risky sign-ins and auditing part of the conditional access. In the risky sign-ins, which is right here under security, you will be able to see all such detections that Azure Active Directory does for us. Azure Active Directory detects the suspicious actions that are related to your user accounts. For each detection, a record called risk event is created right here in this section. So you will be able to see various activities of the user account, like the username, the IP address from where access to Azure Active Directory was done, the location that was used to connect to Azure Directory, the sign-in time, as well as the status, whether the account is active or probably disabled. You can also then click on each one of those risky events and mark them as resolved, mark it as false positive, ignore it, or reactivate them. You can also download the records based on the events listed here, and then add a known IP address range if you would like to whitelist them. Under sign-ins, you will be able to see the audit history for all the user accounts in Active Directory. When we did the lab for conditional access, we saw that Alice was allowed access to an application, at the same time denied access to an application from a different geographical location. And then you see that Alice event, it's all recorded here. Three of them are failure, and then a success, and a failure again, success again. So let's click off on one of these and identify what's the root cause. Let's click on the one with the failure. Once you click on it, another pane opens up where you will be able to find out the username, the fully qualified domain name of the user, the location from where the user tried to access the application, the date, timestamp, audit success or failure, sign-in code, and the reason as well. Now this user, although tried to access from a genuine IP address, but it was denied access because secondary factor authentication failed. Let's click on another one. This is from a different geographical location. The same user tried to log in from a different location, which is Europe. Now, based on the conditional access, Alice should be allowed to access only from the various areas in United States. But looks like someone had the password for Alice. They tried to access from Europe, and the access was blocked because of conditional access. This is a great auditing tool and also prevention tool to protect the infrastructure in Active Directory. The conditional access, along with auditing, does detection and prevention and indirectly helps protect our intellectual property, the applications, and the data we have in cloud-based SaaS applications.